Bob, we're here today to kind of take a look back from 2021 back to, well, I'm not sure, 1994 maybe, when they first started this. I looked it up and there was something called the Vision 2000 Committee, which first presented the idea of a boardwalk. It was Andy Pappas and June Hoye who started that. And then later on, you became the president in 2002, and I was wondering what made you interested in joining that group.
Well, there were a number of coincidences that came together in my mind. My first contact was with Andy Pappas. It was a meeting at his business, his restaurant business, and trying to remember what the background was. It wasn't dealing with anything having to do with the project, but it was I guess it was a meeting we had church members of the choir had in his office after a rehearsal, and he spoke to me, knowing that I was involved with the business of dealing with the town, and
you were on the board of finance at
what?
You were on the board of finance in the town at one point, weren't you?
Not the finance, but I served a number of appointments to the town. All of the land use committees at one time or another. So I worked as a volunteer for the town for at least 20 years, I guess. So that was the beginning of the meeting. I mean, Andy came to me after, during our get together for the choir. He told me of the idea he had, or they had. I'm guessing now that was Joe Legg and Andy to develop a boardwalk between Hole in the Wall and the railroad building.
The underpass?
The underpass. Yeah. At a distance of about 1.2 miles, I guess, total length.
Wasn't that in the 80s?
No, it was like in 1994 that they started that.
It was incorporated in 1994.
Yeah, well, we were working on it for about 8 or 9 years
before you were incorporated. Yeah, so.
Yeah, everything, that was the first that I heard of the project, and the first I got involved with it was, as I explained, by coincidence. Andy was there in the restaurant, and he came up and said, "Do you think that's a good idea?" I didn't know anything more about it than the connection and the location, and I said, "That's brilliant. That's certainly sounds like a no-lose. Everybody wins." I'm sure that it will happen, but it'll take a long time because of complicated relations and getting of property, loans, or donations from the federal government, from the state, and the difficulty of overcoming naysayers of such a project, because it's a large project and it's highly visible, and you don't know who's going to come out of the woodwork in favor or in opposition. So that was the start. I don't know when it was, but I think the total time of our involvement, my involvement and that of people that gathered in as it developed, was on the order of 25 years or so.
It was years, Bob, when they asked you to join. They had been in existence for about 8 years, and I was
No,
reading.
that was a different organization.
Well, no, it was like the Vision Committee, then became the East Lyme Public Trust Foundation.
Yeah, but I'm only familiar with the East Lyme Public Trust
Right,
Foundation,
right.
and any dealings I had with the project was through that organization, and
Yeah.
not through the pre-existing
Right.
organization that Andy Pappas and Jay Giannet were primary
The
instigators of.
newspaper articles that I reviewed said that they had stalled at that point. Stalled.
Yeah,
you know,
because
and they needed you to come on. And what was the
Oh.
thing that they first wanted you to do?
I suggested that I agreed with them to make a boardwalk there. And I said, that's doable, but difficult. We need all kinds of arrangements. So the first formality of creating something was the nonprofit organization that the town attorney, or that, not the town attorney,
Granville Morris.
Randall Morris, that he volunteer his services to create.
Yeah.
And that was the key, because the relationship that I had with Amtrak was not directly, but as a consultant for the federal government, and its involvement with the Amtrak, the administrative branch of the transportation department that provided guidance and kind of care of Amtrak.
Dan, Bob, that was so key, that relationship with
Right.
Amtrak. Was Andy aware of your contact with the Amtrak and the Railroad Administration
I
at
don't
the
think
time?
he was.
So it was really a fortunate
Yeah.
coincidence that you were.
It was it was a coincidence. I obviously lived in East Lyme. I was familiar with the waterfront and the landscape of the area, and particularly with the government of East Lyme, as a member of the various boards of management of things like. I guess I began by being a member of the Water Commission. It was not a very long one, but then not land use, but Waterford. The water aspects of the town, such as aquifer protection, and that was part of planning commission. I was chairman of planning.
For
And,
the town.
For the town.
Yeah.
And similarly, the commission for maintenance of development projects, that is the planning division, planning department, and also subsequently the permitting department. What was that? The final
Zoning Commission?
zoning.
No, not-
Zoning. I was also chairman of zoning for a while, but no, beyond zoning, there was a small group of people who were responsible for various operations and permit reviews and stuff like that.
Bob, you had mentioned naysayers. Can you tell us how the goat path got called that?
That was my idea. I thought I made it as somewhat as a joke, and it we had a few naysayers, and one in particular was very vocal, and he was a member of the town.
Town administration?
No, he was a private citizen.
Private citizen.
He did run for and was elected for one cycle of being on the commissions, the town's governing body.
Didn't he disparagingly say that it was nothing but a goat path?
Yeah, he that's what he used as one of his catchphrases. That why do you want to build a path for goats, goat path, and I thought it was an opportunity to make a more public statement of the project, and also an opportunity to in effect fence with this guy. Not
So-
expecting any
So what
victory,
did you do?
but
What did you do with that name?
I just stood by and watched it
No,
develop.
you put it on maps.
Huh?
You put it on the maps.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
just by talking about it.
No, you wrote it on the maps so that this.
Oh, I didn't. The engineer who did the
okay.
thing talked to me about it,
And you said
he used
he's calling
he
that
used
part
it
a
as
goat path. Yeah,
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to do with that part,
yeah.
but I had a lot to do with coordination with the people who were involved in designing and constructing the boardwalk. But that was one of the things. There were people, for example, this one and others as well, who were ridiculing the spending of money. It was not their money. I mean, it was taxpayer money, mainly, that we finally corralled and got some substantial gifts in support of our project. But the objective was to make the project as visible as possible, as soon as possible, to gain public knowledge of it and hopefully support. I thought that was something you could count upon because it was such a good idea.
Yeah.
And
Didn't it go to a referendum
Yes.
based on?
well, one of our selectmen, one of the earlier selectmen, obviously didn't like the idea. Didn't say this. In fact, he said the opposite. But I know, working with him and just knowing people somewhat, that his attitude was how he didn't say this to me and nor anyone else, and I didn't investigate it. But my intuition told me that he was trying to figure out a way to kill the project, is to prevent it from happening, because he didn't want to deal with what he anticipated to be the business and the cost and the complexity of the project. So he said that he was harping on the fact that, well, he wasn't harping on it, but he was bringing it forward to a public hearing. And I think there were two items on the agenda. This was one, and one was, I think, having to do with the school system, and it was a very hot kind of meeting. So the presentation was made to describe what the boardwalk was and where money would come from and so forth. And they had the referendum was on the docket, along with the school referendum. And as I recall, the school referendum lost, and surprisingly, the boardwalk referendum won, to his great chagrin.
Yeah.
I think. They never said that,
Yeah.
but
I think I remember reading something about it. It it was approved by almost 70% of the
Wow.
vote.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a lot, and it wasn't something that we we planned for. It wasn't something that we lobbied for amongst the people. Just word of mouth and a couple of publications and things like that. That brought general attention to the voters of the town and the plan of this boardwalk. Some of the opposition, one person I say in particular was very active in it, was poo-pooing the whole project because he said, why are you building a boardwalk on the waterfront when everybody knows the ice caps are melting and this will be under 100 feet of water? And the answer to that is when. So, I mean, it was an interesting study in human construction, and it keeps coming up again, other things coming up.
yeah.
Yeah. So Bob, what were the areas that you had to work in when you first took over? You needed to raise money, you needed to get land?
We needed to, organize the money and to make the contacts, and I happen to have been a consultant to the Federal Railroad Administration from the position I had in a company. The Federal Railroad Administration, FRA, was responsible for the highway, for the railroad, and
What did you have to get the railroad to do?
I had to get the land from them
The land.
and other things. Well, it so happens by coincidence that I knew the main PR guy at the railroad for Amtrak, entirely separate and distinct from any association with the federal government as such, other than their own contracts. But I mean, it was just a coincidence. I think that individual who was elevated in office and became the head guy with the kind of PR public relations of the project.
Was it only Amtrak that you had to get land from, or were there others?
Amtrak is a structure that is in control of a transportation project.
No, you got land from Amtrak to build the boardwalk.
About 80% of the
And
land.
who were the others? Do you remember?
There were about 3 others. I think all of them were related, and all of them it was a small amount of land, but it was obviously a critical part of the right-of-way. Of course, it was beach property, had been essentially destroyed in the '38 hurricane from what was on it, buildings and boat launches.
So these were private citizens who donated their land?
They were. I think it was 3 or 4 families that were ultimately tied together, and they sprang out of
Andy Pappas
Andy
was
Pappas's
family.
father,
Yeah.
and there were separate parcels of land amounting to I don't know, probably an acre or 2.
Yeah, so that was a wonderful donation on their part.
Yeah, it was a difficult one to get because the person who was responsible for one of them, bless her soul, was this old obstinate lady, the worst kind. So, but I didn't have anything to do with that except to be a cheerleader to Andy Pappas.
Andy did that, okay, yeah.
So, well,
yeah.
he did it.
Yeah.
He had his troubles with doing it.
He turned on the charm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the charm, right.
Can you remember any memorable meetings that you had to go to with various groups as you marched toward the finish line?
Did I have any key meetings? Well, the key meetings were with the federal government and with the state government, and those were obviously business meetings, and that was I think my main function. We had some public meetings, and I appeared there as a member of the sponsoring group. There was only, I think, 2 of those meetings. They were important, but they were important because of their visibility, not because they had any effect really on the success or failure of the project.
The first winter that the boardwalk was in existence in 2005, it got damaged right away from storms. Do you remember?
An hour, yeah.
Do you remember what repairs?
A year, huh?
What repairs had to be made after the first storm?
Repairs?
Yeah.
Well, there weren't any substantive repairs. I mean, there were multiple problems. I mean, multiple storm problems.
What were they, Bob? What happened
kind
with
of
the
problems?
storm? Yeah.
They were mainly the design was not adequate to withstand the sort of pounding it was to get from the nature, and I knew that would be the case.
I remember the riprap after the storm. A lot of it had,
But
fallen
moved
down.
away and
washed
wiped out
into the
things.
water.
Right.
How did you know? You said you knew that was going to be a problem. How did you know?
35 years of experience with an engineering company. I'm not an engineer. I'm a biologist, an ecologist, and I obviously have to pay attention to the detail of things that have long-term effects. In this case, we got a project that was funded, and that the town then took over the selection of designer, and they obviously picked the wrong designer. They picked somebody who had never done that before, in the sense of being on the waterfront of New Hampshire, of East Lyme, which is very similar to the beating it gets, as does similar structures in Maine or in New Hampshire.
The New England waterfront.
Yeah, New England waterfront, right? Rocky waterfront. And I knew that, and I also knew that the design was not adequate. I did not comment on that. That was not my job or my authority, so I left it to the engineers, which I knew was a mistake, but that's what I had to work with.
Bob, in 2010, Amtrak started to build their new bridge, and they did that for 3 years. What was the effect of that construction on the boardwalk?
Well, in fact, it was of tremendous aid. The benefit of the destructive storms that we had, 2 or 3 of them, that provided the most substantial initial impact on what was done. That Amtrak's, and I knew that Amtrak was planning to change to build a new bridge. Didn't know just when, but it was coincidental that they built it right at the right time, and that was after the damage to the first boardwalk. The boardwalk had been created. The boardwalk thus became very visible and in great, well, I was going to say great demands, but it's not. Today it's great demands, but then it was slowly but regularly increasing with the number of people who use it for various purposes.
Even despite the damage?
To the extent that they could, I don't know if it was open at all. I think it was, part of it was
Maybe a
open.
part of it. When they started construction in 2010, that was also the year Hurricane Rita struck. And then in 2011, Hurricane Sandy struck. So while they're constructing one end of the boardwalk, the western end really got hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was obvious that was going to happen, because the of the waves, the storms, is not equivalent throughout the length of
Right.
this mile and a half, mile point 10 or so boardwalk. It's concentrated on the western
side.
end. So it's focused there, and that's why that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
The design
But,
did not take that into account.
We wouldn't have had the groin without Amtrak, right? That they put in the groin when they were building their new bridge.
Yeah, that was after the fact, though. No, we had drawings, but I mean, we did our own surveying. If that's what you mean, the design of the boardwalk.
I meant that groin that goes out and helps the sand come around.
Oh, that was done by a previous first selectman. I mean, he sponsored the construction of that.
Oh, I thought it was Amtrak who put that in. But
Oh no,
no.
no, he did, and it worked because he had a good designer
Yeah. Yeah.
to catch sand
Right.
coming around the edge and
Right.
coming over.
Right.
But it still remains. If you look at the one of those pictures I brought in, if you look at the aerial view of that whole length, if you look carefully, you find that at the western end of the part that was most damaged is rock, but rough rock. It's not a solid rock, and that characteristic led to the focus of the storm when they came up right there and took it out. Now, and people were moaning and groaning and complaining and saying, you wasted all this money. No, I knew we didn't waste any money, because we had it long enough to prove its popularity
Yeah.
and its usefulness.
Yeah. Now, how did you get the money to rebuild?
It was insurance. It was a suing of the original contractor, settlement of that,
Right.
because it was an inadequate design. And that was the best thing he could do, because they didn't know how to design a good boardwalk.
Can you tell us what was?
Not that I knew how to. I would have commented if I'd known, but that was not my job.
Yeah.
Wasn't that guaranteed for a 25-year storm?
Yeah.
Was that the wording?
We got 100 years.
And now with
100 years,
reconstruction,
yeah.
it's 100.
100, yeah, but they had a 25-year, but it failed after
1 year.
not 1 year,
Yeah.
2 years.
Bob, can you tell us what was involved in creating the educational signs along the boardwalk?
The signs?
The signs. Yeah.
Well, it was I think it was a mutual interest. I certainly was interested in it because of my background as a photographer and just a teacher. It was a great opportunity. Also, some opportunity to raise money. It was not a substantial amount, but a few $1,000s to
People sponsored the signs.
people to
Yeah.
sponsor the signs, as people who sponsored the purchase of the boardwalk
The benches.
benches.
Yeah.
that was.
But did you have a committee and you had artists that got involved?
Yeah, that was, I was the president, so I was involved in everything. Unfortunately or fortunately.
What would you guess, how many hours a day did you spend on this project?
You can ask my wife, unfortunately, she's passed away.
I know.
So she
Too
can't,
many,
she can't
right.
answer.
Yeah.
But, yeah, too many, but it wasn't, I did it because I was retiring.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I wanted something to do.
Right.
And I didn't do it consciously, but I mean, I said, well, that's interesting. I have the time to do it now.
Right.
In fact, I declined the presidency of the foundation before it got organized
Yeah, I
Because you were still
because
working?
I was still working.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure out how to get out of it.
Can you tell us
gracefully.
how you got involved in creating the first monument, and then we had to move the monument? What was involved in all of that?
I have to remember moving the monument.
After the storms, we had to move the monument from
Oh,
the
yeah,
water
we just
side
rebuilt
in.
it, you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had well, we finished the building of the first
like who did you
version,
get to build the monument?
and we didn't build a monument at that time.
No, who did you get to put it up? Like, was it a mason?
Yeah, it was
A mason?
yeah. Well, you don't mean the monument, the plaque that we put on the monument, but rather the monument itself.
Right.
It was a local stonemason from Waterford,
Uh-huh.
and whom I knew, who built we built a house, and he built the fireplace.
So did we have
He did a
to,
wonderful job.
did
so
we
I
have to
figured-
start all over again when after the storm? I mean, was the first one salvaged or?
Oh boy, that's I'm trying to remember. It was in a different location.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. It was at,
It was at the bridge, wasn't it?
No, it was on
And-
the outside of the
Yeah.
boardwalk, so it got
Yeah,
hit
yeah,
right away.
yeah. So-
When you walked through a hole in the wall, you'd see the monument.
that was the original monument,
Yeah.
yes. And that, I've seen pictures of that.
That got.
And it was pretty well damaged.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I don't remember that, but the monument that we have was built during virtually at the end of the reconstruction and the extension of the boardwalk. Now, the company that did the rebuilding of the boardwalk, including the new end of it, the new half of it, was a very good one. Well, it was a good company, and the other company was a good company. However, the trick was that the guy was a wonderful manager of the project, who passed away not too long ago, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I worked with him very closely. Anyway, they knew what they were doing, and they put in the monument, and we had a couple of new plaques, I guess, constructed. The old ones were just put over on it, and it's a concrete cube.
Yeah.
Anchored, so I mean, I expect that if everything else goes, it'll be
It'll
still
last, yeah,
there.
yeah.
Well,
A 1,000 years.
I remember you working with the people who worked on the reconstruction, and how you worked with them to incorporate the monument into the boardwalk itself.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
was an interesting
And-
project.
Yeah.
You helped design that feature.
Yeah, I did some work on where to put the signs and how to aim the place. You'll notice that the monument is with its
Angles,
angles
Yeah.
pointing out to the sea.
And they said they wanted that to suggest the prow of a ship.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know, it was to protect the monument.
Oh.
Yeah, so anyway, let's see if that holds. I'm
Yeah.
sure it will. I mean, I'm sure that if everything else goes into town,
That'll last.
that'll still be there.
When you look back, Bob, what are you most proud of?
Getting it done.
Getting
I mean,
it done,
I mean,
yeah.
it was just
A tremendous task.
well, it took me about 20 years,
Yeah.
beginning to end, and it took about another
You have
10
those
years
other
of
questions.
starting up and getting the thing going, and at the point where there was that opportunity that Andy mentioned, the possibility of a boardwalk.
Yeah.
Nobody ever thought of it.
Right, right.
Because it was once done and it was wiped out in the '38 hurricane.
If you're looking back on it, and what you went through, what would you figure was the biggest pluses in all of this, in terms of your experience with it?
Well, I tell you, what was the best part of it, the most interesting?
Yes.
It was the involvement of some people. I mean, the people could come and go, and some people would come and stay.
The volunteers, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like June Hoye. He was very helpful to me. He was my.
Yeah. He enjoyed every minute of it.
Did
Bob.
he?
Yeah, he really
wouldn't.
did.
He wouldn't have. I never asked him that.
Yeah,
but
he liked it.
He had some mixed feelings. No, he. What was he? I thought of
He was
him
your
as
vice
my Jiminy
president.
Cricket.
Yeah, yeah.
A nasty Jimmy Cricket.
Well,
And he could be. No, he wasn't nasty. It was just very direct. And
I
that's
wrote
what.
an article once about the two of you that said
Oh,
you
did-
were the detail person
Uh-huh.
and he was the people person.
Yeah.
And together you just got it done.
Yeah, that's right. So,
One of my biggest memories of John is the fact that when we had meetings, he said if a meeting runs over an
Over
hour,
an hour.
it's
No
too
good.
long.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
So you must
he
have had that
always
issue.
did
yeah,
that.
yeah, he would, do this when it
Yeah,
was
to
time.
me more than ever, because I like to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
So the involvement of the people was a plus. How about what was, looking back again, what do you think was the biggest problem for you in all of this? What were the,
Both problem and benefit. I mean, the greatest benefit overall, it wasn't a ultimately critical happening we had, but it was very important, and that is the first selectman who served during the Reconstruction age of this. And he was a
Dave
good.
Cheney? Dave Cheney?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was a businessman, local businessman, but he was a good politician, I thought, and it was easy to deal with. Well, he liked the project.
Yeah.
Dave Cheney
Yeah.
and Paul Formica?
Paul.
Formica,
Formica,
yeah. And it was important that we get that support. I mean, just it was not financial support. It was just spiritual support,
Yeah.
I guess.
And Joe Courtney, who was the congressman, he helped out a lot.
No, he didn't help out. He was there, and he didn't obstruct things. I
Uh-huh.
liked him. I met
Yeah.
him once or twice.
Yeah.
But I don't think he had any critical involvement in carrying it out.
Mhm.
I think he benefited from the project,
Yeah.
but which was fine, but would have happened without him.
Was the state really involved much in all
Yeah,
of
they
this?
were involved as usual in the form of really a remarkable, colossal pain. Because, for example, they had that money came in to build the boardwalk. That went through the state because it was a federal grant, and in fact, one of the things we did, I'm getting sidetracked, but one of the things we did was create a nonprofit organization. That was necessary for a number of reasons, but the main reason that I had was it was that we could receive federal monies.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did get federal monies. And the state came in and they took out about 20% of that money. We were very tight on that. They took away 20% of the money that would prevent us from completing the project. So we had to raise 20 more or figure out how to do it for the 20 less. That was very annoying to me.
Why was that? Why did they take the 20%?
Because they're the state and they need tax money. No, it was that simple. It was that
Really?
you want to do this, and you need somebody to review your plans. And my answer to them was, where the hell were you when we had to do the thing initially? You know, in other words, they had the same condition on the first building of the boardwalk. So that means somebody did a review of that design and approved it for the state. It failed. Okay, so then they got another
They approved
type of money, and they got the same deal going.
Yeah.
They got money from that. So
They
well,
proved
anyway, we
something
were a
that
little more
failed,
careful.
you know, yeah.
It was interesting, and that was it was not stressful. It was just an interesting project that
Yeah.
was going along. But it was a continual annoyance, which is the way it is with jobs like that. I mean, it's not. I'm not complaining about it. I'm saying that's the nature of public works training and public works implementation of projects.
Bob,
You got to withstand the psychological trauma. of it.
right. I once wrote that this is what you said to me as when I was interviewed. You invested your retirement in this project along with your marital tranquility.
Yeah.
Now that was an exaggeration, sort of, because Polly also worked on the project and supported your efforts. What did she most enjoy doing?
She?
Yeah.
Well, she liked being there. She liked the fact that it was happening.
Our meetings.
And some of the people that she worked with.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then she
famous
became
names.
our treasurer. She became our treasurer.
Yeah. She was good at that, but she was also good at protecting me.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I did, Bob. And this has to do with the foundation. The boardwalk's been built. It's tremendously popular.
100,000 people a year.
At least.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
At least. And that's an unofficial count because
Yeah.
they don't have somebody clicking away. But looking at it now, in terms of the foundation's role, what do you see our role, the foundation's role now and in the future as far as the boardwalk is concerned?
Well, that's a obvious open question.
Well, just your own personal opinion.
My personal opinion is that you need somebody who is has a background in environmental management, is young enough to sustain involvement in a project for several years, and can take the boardwalk and be given the responsibility to manage it in all respects. So in other words, you use it as a training tool. I tried to do that, but it wasn't possible because there were too many variables. And I mean, like, one of the first things we did was have a class of, there were, I don't know, fourth graders
Yeah.
come in from Waterford.
Yeah.
Why from Waterford and not East Lyme? Because East Lyme was not in the right frame of mind to deal with that. So Waterford was. and it was a marvelous day. I mean, it worked out beautifully, and I saw that as an extension of what could be happening.
So you wanted a bigger educational
Yeah, you want to, yeah, and
part of
we
this.
did some of that. I mean, with a couple of members of the boardwalk, like replanting grass at the top of the side, the beach. That was very good. In other words, getting people involved in enhancing the nature of that structure.
Right.
Not only the boardwalk itself, but the surrounding land and such.
Now, Joe, you took over after left the presidency, and I was amazed that when I reread what happened during the time you were there, you had a big influence. Can you kind of summarize what you did?
Well, part of it was the groundwork had already been laid. Most of the work before the rededication occurred while Bob was president. The completion of the eastern end with Amtrak, and Bob had a tremendous influence there because of his contacts with Amtrak. I remember you said one of the biggest achievements was your getting Amtrak to redo the eastern end as good as or better than it was in its original condition, and that was in the contract. So that was there before I came on, and then the western half, Bob still stayed involved with the.
You made me.
Huh? Yes, I did. Yes, because I didn't know enough about what was going on.
I mean, people forget that it used to be a dirt surface that we
the
walked
goat
on.
path.
Yeah,
The goat path.
and the goat path came down a hill, if you remember. We had to walk kind of,
I
that was
don't
kind of
remember.
shaky coming down that hill.
Yeah.
And so, it really was better when they
Yeah,
got through.
yeah. And so some of the work that continued when I came in, I was there for 5 years, but the grass plantings, the ideas for that, the redoing of the educational signs on the western half, some of the educational programs and pulling in East Lyme, the high school, and Yukon students, and the seed grant process were all traces of the beginnings of that part were already planted by Bob while he was president, and I just followed through with a lot of it.
But you were president during the rededication, right?
That was in
That was a very nice event that we had.
While we're talking about that, we're not, the town is now in charge of the boardwalk, and it makes decisions about what happens with the boardwalk. We're a private non-profit foundation. How do you see us interacting with the town, Bob, at this point, with some of the ideas you said that should be important about the educational aspects? Certainly we don't control that. We don't have the say in that, but how do you see us interacting with the town now as far as relationship with the board?
Yeah, obviously it's a different situation than existed before.
Right.
I think it's a logical sequence of the evolution of the project, but that would require another 20 years at least.
And we'd have to get 2 more Bob Desantos.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, no, you just have to find somebody. I mean, yeah, but there are some of those people around. Although nowadays, I don't know, the attitude of graduates in college today is not what it used to be. Volunteers in particular.
Is the boardwalk one of the most pleasant accomplishments when you think of them in your life?
Gee, that's a good question. I think it's an accomplishment. I don't think many people know about it, but that's okay. And that's not the point. Is not the one of publicity. I'm not running for office or
Yeah.
anything. Never have. But anyway, I think it's a very good idea, but I think it'd be virtually impossible to undertake because the parts that are necessary, namely the boardwalk and its operation and so forth, and the public's involvement, make it virtually impossible to manage it as I conceive of it. I mean, as a
Yeah.
new entity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I'm certainly very pleased at the success of the boardwalk,
Yeah,
and
it's
you're
very
telling me
popular.
that there are 100,000 people. I
Every-
remember when they were 18 or
Yeah.
19.
There were every ad that you see mentions
It mentions-
Niantic
mentions
and
the
the boardwalk,
boardwalk.
and every real estate person
Yeah.
mentions the boardwalk. And
Yeah,
every
now-
business, yeah.
Now, but the question is now, does every member of the Board of Selectmen recognize that value? I wonder.
I hope
don't.
so,
I certainly not in any conscious way.
How do we remind them?
Huh?
How can we continue to remind them?
I think you need to lobby them for a membership to the board of a person who is essentially similar to the director of public works. That is, you get a person who works, who is sponsored by and responsible to the East Lyme Public Trust Foundation, and is in effect paid by the town or some other entity to maintain and develop the boardwalk. I think it's as simple as that. In other words, if you have a fire department and it has a structure of its own and it puts out fires, and for better or worse, but you can have the same thing for a boardwalk. I mean, for the boardwalk, which goes well beyond the boardwalk. I mean, there are all kinds of opportunities that should go beyond the boardwalk. Most of them being educational.
Yeah.
And that's terribly underused by the town. I mean, there are some who do, but
Yeah.
they really don't. They're the focus of the town educational department, as it should be, is with the schools and with the teaching in the schools, and sometimes maybe trips out to visit things or participate in things. There is some participation in East Lyme with the boardwalk, but minor ones. The major participation of which I'm aware really came from Waterford.
So do you see, as you're describing this, do you see the possibility of the foundation becoming a consultant to the town in terms of the boardwalk, the way you're describing it?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you need to carefully define that, because, I mean, the problem I see with that arrangement is the dependence or independence of such an organization.
Yes, yeah.
It can't be dependent on the town. The problem is simply that you're looking for putting some structure into a responsible position, which is really now pretty visible and would become increasingly visible from the point of view of political support and political involvement, and the only way I could conceive of that is to have a non-profit organization that is self-contained, that has an agreement legal agreement with the state or with the town to handle the boardwalk and its activities,
Yeah.
and would be responsible to the town to report on its functioning and its successes or failures in any one year. I mean, like any other organization. I mean, making it a part of the town's being, the town's organization, not subservient in certain ways. I mean, it's complicated because you want the public involved, you want the town to commit to it, but you don't want the interference of people who may want to use the political connections to control a non-profit organization that's interested in environment and pretty settings and helping people feel better when they get ill and they have to walk on a safe place and a smooth place.
Yeah. Anything else that you wanted?
I just want to make sure that when this is reviewed that I've used the phrase, I think you are the godfather of the boardwalk. And I think that's, if we do
There's
it,
our title.
the title of this in some ways should be the godfather of the boardwalk.
Gee, I really like that sound because you're right.
You are.
I mean, I serve as a godfather, not a godfather, but a grandfather and great-grandfather of people.
Yeah.
You are the godfather of the boardwalk.
And sometimes they listen to me, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I don't mind that. But that would be very, very nice, I must say.
Good.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, I think that does it